If you've ever thought to yourself, I'd rather just read about this than actually do it, you're not alone. The Enneagram 5 newsletter exists to help you move from knowing to experiencing. Every Saturday, you'll get insights designed to help fives grow without overwhelm. Sign up for free today at enneagram5.com/newsletter or visit the link in the description. Now on to the show. So Cody.
Yes?
Why do you even get out of bed in the morning?
At this point, I'm trained like a dog. I don't know.
I like that, actually.
Yeah.
My name is, and I'm an Enneagram Five.
My name is, and I'm an Enneagram Five.
My name
Yeah, I wake up every morning and I kind of ask myself that question. I mean, honestly, the only reason why I get out of bed every morning is because I wake up and I have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, I mean, even in some mornings, I don't even care about that.
Just go right in the bed.
I just hold it until I can't anymore. I'm just like, shortening the life of my ever-aging bladder, you know?
Yeah, it's a little harder to do that when you have, toddlers jumping on your stomach. That's usually how I wake up in the mornings.
Yeah, thanks for that. Again, a reminder that I'm glad I don't have kids. I just having to get up in the morning. Well, and dogs have to be taken out in the morning. Sometimes they're a little bit more persistent, I guess. But yeah, and sometimes like working from home, it's worse because I know that it's really just up to me to start work. Like no one's expecting me to. I mean, people expect me to be there at a relatively specific time, like be online or whatever. Yeah, getting out of bed in the morning is a great place to start with this conversation because it is definitely oftentimes, especially depending on what part of my never-ending cycles of emotional instability, like where I'm at in that, some days I really have to be like, do I need a job? Do I need to do anything? Like, can I just implode my life and lay here forever?
Go live in the woods? Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah, I've thought about that a lot. Yeah, it circles my brain all the time. It's like after you get through an entire idea where you deconstruct all things like religion and death and everything, and you're like, if nothing matters, if we don't have any like being on high telling us or judging us for what we're doing or not doing, like my first thought after religion was, okay, but then does anything matter at all? Or can I just start like, I don't know, tearing my house down and no one's going to stop me? Like, I don't know, like you could just set things on fire just to watch it burn, know? And so I was really close to becoming the Joker. Just going to set the world on fire to watch the world burn. I don't know. I had to go through that whole phase. And I think sometimes I still go back to it and think about like, I don't know. I mean, how much time do we spend at jobs that don't matter, doing things that don't matter, and while we're missing out on things that to us would matter, like spending time with your kids or traveling the world and seeing things, like actually making the most of our experience? How much time do we just spend doing nothing for money, which is paper that we give to other people for junk that we don't need? I don't know. It's just a constant cycle. Now this conversation is going to quickly become about capitalism.
Oh, dude! If you were hoping to like get this, uplifting message and the whole episode wrapped in a bow, I think that like this episode has the least chance of that happening.
Yeah,
we talked about this a bit in the religion episode, and we got into it a little bit, but I think we wanted to dig in a little bit further because when you get down at the sort of the lower levels of what we're calling levels of development or levels of health of a 5, essentially what you have is just a complete schizo-nihilist, right?
Yeah.
And I've been there. I mean,
so have I.
I have. Like, I constantly go back to this picture in my head. It's Josiah in college in his parents' basement in a black hoodie in the dark watching anime for hours on end. Like,
I've physically seen that version of Josiah.
Because I was in your parents' basement.
You were in my basement doing that.
I wanted the world to go away because I didn't feel like anything mattered. I didn't matter. The world didn't matter. Everything was meaningless. And I felt little to no desire to do anything.
I feel like I go through that a lot in my life in short spurts. But sometimes I think too, like how often society has developed within us, right? Like they've kind of brainwashed us into being like little animals of productivity and work, little workhorses. And we're just ants in the maze. Every time I try to sit down and relax for too long, nowadays I feel like I'm being unproductive, like I should be doing something else.
Yeah.
It's hard to sit down for me these days. Like when I was younger, I had no problem sitting down and binging an entire show, which we've talked about when you watched all of Lost. But it's I can't do that anymore. I can't just sit and watch episode after episode after episode, because after a couple of hours, I feel like I should do something more productive. And even when like I'm unwinding at night and catching up with my brother on video games, I have a max where like after 2 hours, I'm like, I got to get up and do something else. Even if it's 1 a.m. and all I can do is go to bed. I'm like, well, I guess I should go to bed because I have work in the morning or whatever the thing is. And then the cycle starts all over where I don't want to get out of bed. And then, and then I'm just working my way through the day to get back to the thing in the evening. I also too think that there's a whole other side of this too, which is what some might call pipe dreams, or like the creative side that I spend so much of my life wishing I could just do that, whatever the creative thing is. I wish that my entire job was this podcast, or that my entire job was playing music or writing music or creating music or anything in that creative space. I always have wanted to do that full time. I've always wanted to do that. And so it's easier for me to get into kind of a nihilistic place of like, why do we have to do anything? Because I hate it. And I don't want to do it if I hate it. And so, especially in the past, like with jobs and stuff, I would get to that place very quickly because it wasn't what I really wanted to be doing. It was just the thing that I had to do while I was thinking about the thing that I wanted to be doing. Yeah. And so when you're not allowed to ever do the thing you want to do because you have to do all these things you have to do, it's very easy to get into this place where you're like, why does anything fucking matter? And why does it have to matter to me?
Right.
Yeah, I spiral very quickly.
And here's the thing, though. The job doesn't make a difference in that regard, because I have the cushiest of cushy tech jobs, right?
Yeah.
I love my job.
You really lucked out.
And I get paid absurdly well.
Yeah.
And I feel like all I do is just like talk out of my ass all day, and magically things happen and I get rewarded for it. Like that's basically how I feel about my job sometimes.
Does your old boss still listen to this podcast?
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
Hopefully my new boss doesn't. But no, like seriously, like, I recognize that I am delivering a certain amount of value to the company and to our customers and to, the people who our customers serve. And that's really the only way I can kind of keep going, because I feel this like deep-seated, I don't know if it's rebellious nature or what it is, but I'm part of the machine no matter what. And I just want to stick stuff in the gears and cause a bunch of chaos. And I have to to fight that all the time.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure exactly why. Like, I think part of it might just be when I get to a certain level of competency, I get bored. That's one of the things we talked about, right? But I think there's also like a larger existential piece to it where I realize that I'm in a system that I feel like was not built for me.
Yeah.
But I'm contributing to prolonging that system because I'm helping all of it.
The great pyramid scheme of capitalism. Benefiting the few.
So I'm actually a fan of capitalism, but I'm not a fan of corporatism. So I don't want to go down that whole
That's true.
that whole rabbit trail. But like, I feel like I've become the man in a lot of ways. But at the same time, when I step back and I realize that if I look at like what my job is, like I have people who report to me. Basically what my job is, I'm in tech and I'm responsible to make sure that the millions of dollars we invest in engineering, we get a good return on that investment. So it's an insane responsibility.
Yeah.
And I feel like no sane person should give me that job. Like I feel completely inadequate, and at the same time feel like I'm a badass at it. Like it's just this weird dynamic.
Well, that you have to almost ask yourself at that point then, is there a part of you that would feel inadequate doing anything? Would you always question yourself and be like, could this be done better by somebody else? Because maybe you really are badass at it. I mean, clearly you are, because you keep getting given opportunities to do more things. So like, obviously they think you're doing well. So like you're excelling at the system that you constantly are always also questioning whether or not you belong there.
Right. That's part of the problem, because I'm good at playing the game too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel that, except I feel exactly the opposite in every way.
I feel that, but not at all.
No, it's the same. It's a very similar experience, except just reverse everything, because I'm on the bottom of this.
You're one of the
giant.
peons.
Yeah, I'm the peon. I'm the lead generator for our account executives, and
you feed the machine.
Yeah, I'm a bottom feeder for sure. Yeah. Yeah. In the Matrix, I'm just those little like sentinel things that go around collecting things. Yeah, no, I think that for me, it's been so hard to stay encouraged in a system. And I don't know how this became all about like just corporatism, but
let's just go with it.
But I think it does definitely feed into, I'm sure people will relate to us in this, because it's where a lot of my existentialism and nihilism stems from, is this idea of having to spend, I mean, it works its way into all of my songs. It's in the Weatherman, which I have played for all of you.
Right.
This idea of having to give yourself 5 days a week to somebody else's dream.
Yeah.
And somebody else's like big goals and big thing that they made their entire life about. And somehow I got caught up in their dream. How does that make sense? And so, especially when I have my own big dreams and I want to do my own big things, and it's like, it starts making you think like, there's not enough room for everybody to have their dreams. Some people are just going to die being a part of somebody else's dream. And so it just depends on who was given the most opportunities. If we're talking about between the two of us, I already know which one is going to get their opportunity, and it's not going to be me, because the system likes you more.
I have more favor with God.
Yeah, don't even talk. I actually just had this conversation with somebody else again yesterday about how there's certain people that I know that I'm like, if there's a God, then it only proves that he loves some people more than others, because I know people who just keep getting shit given to them, and it just, everything works out for them all the time. And I'm like, of course you're still a Christian. It works for you. The same thought creeps in. This is what I mean by I understand the same experience, but from the opposite side of it. It's like two sides of the same coin in my mind, where it's like you could get bored and then feel like nothing matters, or you can feel like you're never actually getting to the place you want to get, and therefore does it actually matter? Like, do I need to keep doing this? How much runway do I actually have doing this? How much resources can I keep giving to this thing? Where am I going to even make it? I don't know. Should I just do something else? And I've always done something else in the past.
And every time you make a change, you end up back in the same place.
Yeah.
And it just feels like this endless cycle of absurdity.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you really want to black pill, then, which apparently this is what this conversation has turned into, 1,000 years from now, no one will have known that you existed.
Oh my God. I think about that all the time, actually. So another author, Michael Gungor, wrote that book, This, right?
Yeah. Which is one of my favorut books.
It's an amazing
despite
book.
my feelings about him.
Despite my feelings about him, yeah. And what he did after the book, which royally pissed me off. But the book itself was actually really good. And it was like a really great like Buddhism 101 in my mind, of kind of like really beginning, like touching on some aspects of Buddhism, introduced me to some different thoughts of like spirituality without being spiritual, which I really enjoyed and appreciated. But he's also a 5, so
5-wing 4, yeah.
Yeah, so he makes a lot of sense in that way, in the way that he thinks, and likes to go down these like crazy rabbit holes and just see where it leads. But I think about that. I think about the fact that we're just like here for such a small, tiny little bit of time, and then once we're gone, like who the fuck cares? Like nothing matters. And the death thing, we've talked about it numerous times. I'm not going back into it very in depth because I'm also tired of hearing myself talk about it in the editing phase. But, going through that definitely had these lasting impacts for me, these lasting feelings about how life is only as meaningful as you want it to be, because it's all subjective meaning at that point. Like, is there any objective meaning to anything? I don't know. Probably not. I mean, the earth hates us being here. We're a cancer to that. So like in our very existence is problematic in the grand scheme of things. How the hell we even got here doesn't even make sense. So like, I don't know. I feel like we're always something bad as human beings. So like we have to be our own.
Well, hold on, Cody. That sounds a lot like original sin.
Does it?
I think it does.
At what point do I start going down the road of like, we need a savior, right? But I'm not going to go there.
There's no savior coming.
There's no one coming. It's only us. I had a song when I was writing the songs for this record I'm trying to work on. I had a song that was literally titled "No One's Coming," and it's that exact whole thing. And so, yeah, no one's coming to save us. It's all up to us.
And that means we're fucked.
Anyway, thanks, guys. We'll see you next
that's
episode.
That's the wrap.
That's a wrap.
Oh, man.
God, if anybody wants to know what our After Hours podcast is like, it's basically this. If I just didn't edit any of this, that's what it would be. That's hopefully we get to some place where it's a little bit more hopeful. But a lot of times, depending on the week we've had, this is kind of how it ends. We'll be like, well, we've gone on long enough.
Yeah, the whiskey helps too, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's true. If we were drinking wine, we'd feel different. We'd feel more hopeful and like philosophical, maybe.
Maybe, yeah.
I know that brings it. Long Island iced teas bring it out, and I know that much.
We're not telling that story.
I think that makes it sound way worse.
Strangely, I was trying to have this talk with my husband, who is an 8-wing 7, just the other night. And I think as a mom of 3 children, 2 of which are grown and out of the house, and the last one is a senior, I'm really wrestling with the season of finding meaning in my life. So not that necessarily my life is meaningless, though I do struggle to now find the new meaning for my life. I think that that's interesting. Have I overcome this feeling? Absolutely not. And I don't know, does that mean I go get a job? Does that mean, well, let's be real, I volunteer a lot already for a lot of different things. Volunteer extraordinaire here. But yeah, I really don't know how to get over the hurdle. Why? I think maybe a lack of support from my spouse. He's not really into me working outside of the home. And I'm not sure how to find purpose still inside the home. And he takes offense to that. And basically, there's something wrong with me. And I was trying to explain that no, that's actually not the case. And it has nothing to do with him or our relationship of 21 years. But I don't know. It's a weird cycle to be in. And I hope to find some answers soon.
I think maybe in the past, I had a hard time wrestling with whether life was meaningless, but now I absolutely embrace it and totally think it is. My least favorite quote is, "Everything happens for a reason," because I absolutely do not think that could be true for a million different reasons.
So the upside of nihilism
I'm really excited to hear this part.
is that nothing matters.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can take it either way, right? Nothing matters, and then so why even take the next breath? Or nothing matters, so like I'm gonna do what makes me feel good, and then then you get into hedonism, and that's a whole other issue. But like, let's just start with like maybe there's an upside to nothing matters.
Yeah, I actually do think I was just going down the dark hole there for a little while just for the sake of conversation, but I actually do think there is an upside to nothing matters, because I think that again, if we're going to attribute our own meaning to things, if meaning is subjective in our own minds, because we're the central character in our own story always. And so everything means something because it benefits the main character in the story, right? It's the only reason anything would ever mean anything, whether you believe in religion or not. Even in religion, even in Christianity, if we're going to talk about as white Americans, Christianity is one thing that we know the most of. Jesus was never the center of that story. We are. Jesus helped us. It's always about us, whether we want to admit it or not. It's like when I was in Christianity, it was always about me. It's always about my salvation and what happens to me after I die and where I'm going. Jesus was the side character that assisted me in getting to the place that I wanted to be to create that good story and the good ending.
He was the guide and you were the hero to the story.
Yeah. You're always the hero of your own story. Or villain for a lot of fives.
You're an anti-hero.
Yeah, anti-hero. I love anti-hero stories. So I honestly believe, it's the reason why the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once makes me cry, because it really does drive home this idea that nothing matters, and it's a good thing. In a weird way, by the end of it, you feel like it's a good thing that nothing matters, and I highly recommend it if you haven't seen that movie. I think you would too. We've both seen it and loved it for all kinds of different reasons. It's got
we had some fun conversations after.
We did. Yeah. It almost makes me more appreciative and more grateful for life, knowing that it doesn't matter, knowing that I don't have some kind of higher purpose to be living out in this world. It's only the purpose that I want to live out. And if I choose to be a force for good in the world, then great, that's awesome. If I don't, then repercussions will probably happen, and like the system will punish me for that, but I'm also living out what I want to live out there too. So I think nothing matters has also helped me not judge other people in weird ways. I don't know if that makes any sense or not, but people do crazy shit sometimes for whatever reason, but everybody always has a reason. And most of the time, people think that they're doing good by themselves by doing something that may be hurtful or harmful to other people, emotionally at least. And I feel like it's helped me to get to a place where I'm a little bit easier on myself and others. I just give people more benefit of the doubt, I think, because nothing matters. So why care? Why do I get to decide what's right and wrong, or what the best option is if somebody should be living or doing or saying? I don't know. It's just, in that way, I guess that's positive, right?
Yeah. I was going back to the time when we were in labor with Amy. And
which one?
The first one.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was with her for all 13 hours of terrible back labor, which she described as felt like someone was taking an axe and just splitting like her spine in half. Like, she kind of entered this primal state, right, where she was just focused on the next contraction and the next contraction, and she described it as like feeling like she was in purgatory. Right? Wow. Okay. And I was with her the whole way, and it was this magical experience. Like I can't even put it into words. It was a mystical experience. And I remember when our first son came out and I saw him for the first time with my eyes, and he looked like a gray orc, and but quickly, like, it was so surreal watching all of a sudden he, like, within seconds, he went from looking just weird into like the blood comes in and the skin turns pink and he starts looking, like a human.
Yeah.
And then I remember, one of the things that we do, so there's this thing called golden hour, which is where the hormones are at a certain place where it's like bonding is optimal. And you're kind of trying to you're doing what you can to set up bonding as quickly as possible.
Okay. And
part of that is like skin to skin. So he did it with Amy first and tried to nurse and all of that. And then I took my shirt off, which was a little awkward with all of these nurses and stuff around, but I sat down on the chair and I put him on my chest while, they were attending to her and making sure she was okay. And I held him there. And I remember I was holding him as my son. And it was so surreal in the first time. And I was holding him against my chest and pressing him against my skin. And I looked down and I looked at his face, and he looked up in my eyes. And I said to him, "You don't matter."
Man, you really had me there. Oh, man.
I gripped you with that one, didn't I?
Oh, you did. That was so good. Oh, my God. That was so funny.
But isn't that absurd? Right? I mean, we've spent the last, however many minutes like talking about how nothing matters. And there, I would never look any child in the eye and say that to them. But I did to make a point, which is that we can talk all day about nihilism, and it's easy to say that nothing matters, but no one can actually live life that way.
No.
And
You can for only short amounts of time.
Right. Like, no, because nothing functions with that. And I choose to live a life where things matter, where there is meaning. And it does. And honestly, it doesn't really matter to me if I create the meaning or the meaning comes from somewhere else. Like,
right. At the end of the day, what enriches your experience when you're alive? And I guess that's kind of where I was getting is like, if nothing matters, then it doesn't matter. You can say that everything matters. I've said that before, I think, in an episode. If nothing matters, then everything matters because...
Well, if everything matters, that's a little overwhelming.
Well,
hold on there, Cody.
In the sense that, like, you get to, I mean, we all cherry pick what matters anyway.
Sure, yeah.
So why not cherry pick it for a more enriching and positive experience, I guess, You get to choose that your kids matter and they choose that you matter to them, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's for their own survival now or not, at some point in life, hopefully you'll be a good enough dad that they'll choose you matter when they get older too.
Right, yeah.
Everybody just chooses. We make all of these decisions based on chemicals and hormones, or maybe we have to consciously, especially with family members, a lot of the time, you have to consciously decide that they matter. And, I have a lot of extended family members that, I had to consciously tell myself that they matter and I love them. And I know that everybody can relate to that to some degree because we're all somehow born into these groups of people that we just are supposed to get along with forever. And that's unnatural. And so, there's everything, all dynamics, every situation, every circumstance, it either matters or it doesn't. But you get to decide that. And at the end of the day, I find that when I'm sitting on my balcony watching a sunset, I don't think that God made it, but I sure do appreciate it the same way. And I appreciate, and maybe in some ways even more so, like today I learned something that blew my mind that I never knew before. Do you know how tides work?
I think I know how tides work.
Okay, well,
but tell me.
I'll just say it. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of you telling me what you think, and I'll tell you what I think. So I learned today that because of the sun and the moon and the gravitational pull, there's actually bulges of water on either side of the Earth, and the land is just rotating inside the bulges of water. And so the tide coming in there's no such thing as a tide. It's just the land moving in the rotation of the Earth into the bulge, and then out of the bulge is the tide going out. And my mind fucking exploded thinking about that. I was just like, what? So basically it was like, he was saying like, the tides are just our outdated language of something that we don't fully understand. We didn't fully understand, and somehow we still use that. Just like we say that the sun sets, and that's easier than saying like because of the rotation on the Earth and the axis and the way that we're going around the sun, like we lose sight of it on the horizon or whatever. He's like it sets, the sun sets and it rises. And I thought about that, and I was just like, man. How we attribute meaning, we so flippantly use words and phrases all the time and just attribute meaning to them as though like everybody understands how this works. I didn't understand. I have long thought about how tides work and never looked it up. And I just assumed that, I guess like, I don't know, the moon pulls the water and pushes it. I don't really know how that works. I never really thought about it. And I'll probably be judged in our community for this entire conversation now. But
I always hesitate to say anything like science related.
Yeah, well, I just heard this today. It's very fresh on my mind. So, you can question me on it. I can show you the link. But it kind of just blew my mind to think about. And in that way, though, right? Like, how crazy is it to sit on a gigantic piece of land and you're the speck of dust in comparison, and you're moving on a gigantic planet that's moving however many, thousands of miles an hour through space, and we're watching the tides come in and out, quotes. But we're actually moving through water on a planet that's flying through space beside a gigantic fiery rock that's giving us life. It's just, in those kinds of crazy things, you start thinking bigger about that. And I'm like, God actually seems pretty damn small from what I always knew God as compared to like actual science. I don't know. I can understand why my brother like leaned into science really hard, and he could go into like how a leaf is magical and amazing. But so I think that, I don't know, when you start thinking about how small we are and how big everything else is, like sometimes, in some similar ways, the way that I used to look up at the stars when I believed there was a God looking back down on me somehow, it was smaller and less significant than now when I know that I'm the only one looking up at the stars and no one's looking back at me that I know of. Go into the alien conversation, but
we need to do an updated episode of that. By the way, a lot of stuff has happened since we talked about that.
Hey, baby. I mean, we have room in the season. I just think that when I know that I'm the only one looking up at the stars and attributing meaning, the same way that Aristotle looked up at the stars and attributed meaning, the way that Einstein looked at a chalkboard and attributed meaning. Like, I don't know. It's just, to me, we're all just creating meaning, and then we just evolve into deciding if that actually has any meaning for us collectively or not. It's just it's either collective or individual meaning and purpose and what makes sense and what doesn't to ourselves right now. But nothing that I think right now is going to matter to anybody 100 years from now if we still have humanity on a planet that's dying.
And we're back to the black pill.
And we're back.
By the way, way to low key compare yourself to Aristotle and Einstein.
But again, though, I think that makes sense because nothing matters,
right?
Like how are they any more important than me? Because who decided that, right? Like who? Maybe I haven't done the thing that will influence thousands or millions of people in the future. Who knows? Or maybe I'll do nothing. But very easily, Einstein could have done nothing. Let's be honest. He was a crazy person. He showered like once a year, right? Or something crazy. Yeah, I'm going to make that comparison because who gives a fuck? Challenge me. I dare you.
I have struggled with some form of nihilism since I was a little kid. I remember sitting there at 7 years old, having these bizarre notions and concepts in my mind, like, am I real? Is everything around me real? Am I the only one that's real? Do we die and sit there on clouds forever? Oh my gosh, eternity sounds like a really long time. I've had these bizarre thoughts. And I would go into rooms and kind of dwell on bizarre things like this. I think it's a 5 thing. I hope it's a 5 thing. But yes, to say that I don't now would be not true. I definitely have these random thoughts, but I know ultimately it's not in our control to know what happens, and we don't know everything. To really think of how little we know in the scheme of the universe, you can't assume that you know absolutely everything or can assume. What you can do is control your thinking. I focus on what's helping me at the present moment, such as philosophy. I was raised a Christian. That goes back to your perspective on life and what's serving you right now and what's serving your health and what's serving the people around you. And that would be the way that I combat it. Otherwise, if I allow myself, I'll get stuck in my head, and it's not a good or even logical place to be. So basically, I would say the way I combat it is learning.
I'm a 5-wing-4, and meaning is like oxygen for me. I try to uncover the meaning behind practically everything. Ironically, I was really into nihilism during my late teens and early 20s. I even chose to write a thesis about it during high school. At the time, I argued that it was a virtue, or at least a virtue in the fact that we can live a meaningful life despite the arbitrary nature of life. I think it was a way for me to cope with my own depression at the time, to find some hope and solace amidst all the chaos in the world. As I got older, I began to open up to the idea that life is ultimately a mystery. But when I reflect on nature and its order, I can sense that there's some kind of intelligence behind it. Yet human beings are kind of still figuring it out, and we will continue for many more generations. Why do we suffer? Why are we here? These are big questions, and I've always believed that they are worth exploring. Also, because we as fives are really sensitive to logic and meaning, I think that nihilism is not so much a fact as much as a reaction to all the chaos and seemingly illogical things in the world that we experience. It's especially difficult to digest for someone who craves logic and meaning in their lives.
So if we want to bring it back around and
somewhere,
who knows, the whole corporate conversation, right?
All right. We got to make people want to go to work today.
I know, right? I think about this a lot, and I can't really get into this point without telling a little bit about what I do, right? So I'm in product. And so basically what we do is we kind of sit between the engineering team and the stakeholders and the customers, and we make sure that the product moves forward in a way that solves customer needs and meets business objectives. And you're already bored, like just me trying to describe this, but I work on a platform that essentially empowers affiliate marketing, which also sounds boring.
Whatever that means.
Right?
Yeah.
So like if you've been on Instagram, you come across these influencers who talk about a product that they like, and they endorse this product, and they say, go click on my link.
So that I get paid for it.
Yeah. And then it's no cost to you, but I get a little kickback for it. And if you like this product, you buy it, and, I get, commission for that. Essentially, that's what affiliate marketing is. And so our platform empowers that. It generates those links for them, and then make sure that when someone clicks on it and purchases it, that they actually get credit for it and get the sale and get the money. Right. And so describing that in that way, it's like, okay, well, I guess that's sort of a necessary function, right? But I think back to a friend of mine. His name is Shane, and he was a high school teacher in Kentucky. He and his wife both were. They both worked in education, and they had 2 kids. So one morning, Shane was driving his son to daycare, and he went to drop him off on his way to work, and his son didn't want to go in, and really freaked out to go in. And so he started asking him questions about why. And he effectively found out that the daycare was abusing kids.
Oh, wow.
So they were doing things like sitting on them with beanbags when they were acting up, or locking them in the bathroom in the dark for hours when they've had an accident. And the daycare was originally run by this sweet old lady, and then someone else bought it and brought in new management, and that's how they were treating the kids. So he's like, obviously I can't take my kid in there.
Yeah.
And his son was older than his daughter. So he drove his son over to his daughter's daycare, and they were like, he's too old to be here. We can watch him for a little bit, but you got to come back and get him soon. And he's like, okay, I just need to go into work and get all this worked out. And so he went into work and talked to his principal and explained the situation. And she said, I'm sorry, we don't have anyone to cover you. You have to be here. You have to handle your personal stuff on your own time. And he was like, well, what happens if I leave? And she said, well, you could be fired. And he said, okay, well, I'm leaving. And he left, and he took his son home, and he didn't end up getting fired. But the way he tells the story is he looked himself in the mirror on the way home, and he said, I'm going to do whatever I can so that I never have to be in this situation again, where someone else is telling me what's more important than my family.
Yeah.
So he started to try to figure out how he can create a life for himself and his family that is independent of everyone else, and start his own business. And so he, this was back kind of in the earlier days of internet marketing, and he started trying out all this stuff and was hitting his head against the wall for 6 months and never made a cent. And his wife thought he was crazy, but he just felt something inside, I'm driven to do this. I have to figure this out. He was basically creating content online and trying to make money off of that. And he had his laptop open in bed one night before he went to bed, and was looking at his Google AdSense account, and he had still made $0.
Yeah.
$0, 0 cents. And the way that he tells the story is he went into the bathroom and he looked in the mirror, and he was basically just like, God, give me a sign, right? If this is meant to be, give me a dime. I don't care. I just need to know that this is possible. And he left the bathroom, went back out, thought, hey, I'm going to check it one more time before I go to bed. And he opened it up, and there's 11 cents in there. It was a dime and a penny, right? And he freaks out, starts yelling, and his wife thinks that he's gone crazy. And she's like, what is happening? He's like, I just made 11 cents online. And if I can make 11 cents, I can make $11. I can make $1,100. I can make $11,000, right?
Wow. Okay.
And he realized that
he must be an 8.
This is possible. I don't know, but he's very, he has some big energy, right? And he just pushes forward. And so just that little bit of commission changed his life. And he went from there within just a matter of months. He and his wife both had created a business online that allowed them both to quit their jobs and make more money than what they were making as educators. And then within a few years had multi-million-dollar businesses online.
You know what this also sounds like? Every pyramid scheme.
No, they create.
I've heard this story before. I think it's the story of Amway.
It was not an MLM.
Okay.
They created content and created, so like she was an elementary librarian, so she created this whole like year-long curriculum for librarians, and so they paid her for her lesson plans, and he was a high school football coach, so he created all of these like playbooks and things, and like they delivered value, and people found it and bought it, and they built this huge like membership business off of those things, and then they ended up teaching other people how to do what they did, and they have an amazing life, right? And it all started because he made 11 cents and he realized it was possible. And
does he also have a book?
He
sounds like a book.
He's working on it.
Okay,
He's working with the same author coach that I work. Yeah. That's actually how I met him. It was at a workshop there.
Yeah. 11 cents to 11 million.
But the whole point for him is like, it wasn't real until he got paid. And the platform that I work on, the tool that I work on is what empowers that. And so it's easy to get focused on the day-to-day of all the minutia and the inconveniences and the Zoom meetings. Oh my God!
Well, and especially because you're on like the software side too, so it isn't like you're not getting to know the people using your platform.
So like it's easy to get caught up in all of that and being the gear inside of the machine. But what keeps me going is thinking about all of the people like Shane that I'm helping make their dreams a reality. Just because we're building things that enable that to happen. And there's so many things like that in this world. And the farther like we go as a society, the more and more complex it gets. And the more and more like everything that we do has second, third, fourth order of magnitude, like effects on people. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that one way to sort of combat nihilism is to realize how connected we actually are, and how our decisions can have an effect on other people, and our choices do matter, right? And even for me as a manager, I've had shitty managers and they've made my life a living hell. And I hate it. I came to work every day wondering if I was going to get fired, and it was a nightmare. And I know what that's like. And I also have had amazing managers who were mentors to me still to this day, and who completely turned my life around and leapfrogged my career and gave me the opportunity to fail when I didn't deserve it, and gave me responsibility when I didn't deserve it. And like, I was able to achieve great things because they believed in me. And I know the difference between the two of those. And so even if I'm not thinking like outside of the ripples of the whatever widget I happen to be working on, I'm responsible for helping manage and mentor the people on my team. And I can make or break their experience at this company. And which means like I'm affecting their day to day and how I go about building that relationship with them. And I could be a micromanager, who picks apart everything that they do, which I'm absolutely not, because I hate that.
Yeah, same.
Or I could be someone who's like there as support, who is like cheering them on, and whatever they need, I'm helping make sure they're set up for success. Like, that is my goal. And I absolutely matter to those people. And I matter to my kids, right? And I matter to my wife, and I matter to the people that I interact with. I matter to you. You and I matter to the people who are listening to this podcast. Yeah. Like, and every time we talk about that, like, that blows my mind. But we get so many messages of people who listen and say, hey, I really resonated with this. Like, I felt so alone, and I feel like I found my people. And all we're doing is sitting down as two friends who have known each other way too long and sitting in front of some mics and having a conversation about our life,
the things that mean something to us,
and the things that mean something to us, right? And somehow that means something to other people.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I think it's easy to get into that state of nothing really matters. And maybe that's true. I don't know. I think that can be a helpful foundation if it means deconstructing all of the other things that you've built up as mattering that aren't helping you. But at the same time, I can't really live that way, because I know I see the results of the effects that I have on the lives around me. And that continues to reverberate throughout generations, whether or not we realize it.
Yeah.
And so at the end of the day, life is not meaningless.
But it is.
It is and it isn't.
It is and it isn't.
I don't think I wrestle with it anymore. As I was thinking about this question, I got the vague sensation and memory that I think I had some crises about it when I was really little, but it was so long ago I don't really have any firm recollections of it. It reminds me of the cartoon where there's this little person who looks very despairing and they're like, life is meaningless. In the next frame, there's one that's ecstatic and they're like, life is meaningless. And I think that I fall into that latter category where for me, life is all cyclical. Life doesn't have a grand meaning per se. Maybe it does, but does it really matter if it does? Because it's the choices we make and the meaning that we make of the moment that we live. So I guess that's how I came to terms with that, is that, yeah, life is meaningless. What meaning are you going to make of it?
I genuinely do feel that way through most of my life and my day these days, because I've somehow stumbled into a life where I have people that matter to me and I matter to them, like you're saying. I generally enjoy my existence on this earth at this point, for the most part, and I'm mostly allowed to do the things that I like to do. So
yeah, we also have to take into account how extremely fortunate we are,
right?
Not just within our society, but the fact that we live in the wealthiest country in the world and we're part of the top,
we have an immense amount of privilege, systemically and otherwise.
And so we, and then we find things to complain about. So
everything that comes out of our mouth is first world problems, right?
It's really easy to black pill when you're kind of, you don't have a lot of real significant problems like where am I going to get my next meal, right?
Right. Yeah. We could. That's a whole other conversation, really. So yes, I think we both acknowledge that we're talking about this from a place that hopefully just inspires your own conversations and your own experiences, and maybe in our community you can tell us about your experiences. But since you brought it up, now we had to acknowledge the fact that yes, we're white cis men in upper middle class America.
Well,
especially since we were talking about corporate America so much too.
The big takeaway for me is that we as fives love to deconstruct everything.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the main mechanisms that gets us down into this really nihilistic place, because when you take everything apart, nothing means anything. When you think about what language is and just speaking, it just sounds coming out of a hole, right? And somehow we've decided that certain sounds mean certain things, right? But, it's all meaningless, right? And we're good at that. And it's useful in a lot of settings, but it's not useful when you want to cherish the moments in life and understand how you fit into the greater whole of existence, and how just a tweak in your expression could make or break your kid's day, right? And how they respond to that and how they interpret the emotions that you're sending forth. And so many little things that we just take for granted in how we interact and how we are interdependent on each other. So don't pull it apart too much. Or if you pull it apart, make sure that you start putting things back together.
We can end on this too. I think it's worth noting too, this human experience that I've so deeply and terribly bashed in this entire episode also has these unexplainable moments that we can't define them. We don't know how they happen, where something will happen and somewhere deep in the recesses of our self, whatever self is, whatever soul is, right? This warmth and feeling emerges and bursts out of us and causes us to tear up or get emotional or whatever. And there's this inner feeling that cries out, this matters, this means something, whatever the thing is. And it happens all the time because we're human beings. And whether it's your son being born, whether it's a beautiful sunset, whether it's me watching Everything Everywhere All at Once, the movie, not Everything Everywhere All at Once, but, it's certain things will always make me emotional. And I know, certain things in my life, I have triggers. So I do have reasons why I know they happen, whether it's stuff from childhood or whatever, make me emotional when I see them or whatever. But some things you just can't explain. So we come up with different things. We call it God, we call it whatever. But some things we don't know what it means. And yet something deep within us says it means something. It means something more than ourselves. And so to discount that or disregard that feeling, I think also diminishes life and it diminishes our experience. And at the end of the day, all we have is our experience. Today is over and we'll start tomorrow, and all we'll have is what we did today for that day. Like, we're always writing a story. We don't get to go back and rewrite it. So, I just feel like I think a lot about what will put me on my deathbed and how I'll feel when I get there. And
I'm sure I'll contribute to that.
And you'll be right there beside me, smirking in the corner. But, and I just, we all should be so lucky as to get to that place in life where we can look back on a life and say that it was well lived or well experienced. Maybe even did, what is it? The thing that terminal patients say the most when they're on their deathbed, the number one thing that they say the most is that they wished that they had done more with their life, and they wish they had, gotten out of the bubble, essentially, of just living the 9-to-5 life and doing all the things, because it forces life to go by way faster, and you miss out on all the important things. They wish they had spent more time with their families. They wish they had traveled more. But at the end of the day, all they're saying is, I wished I had done more with the time that I was given. And I just kind of want to be able to say that at the end of my life. And here I am working 9-to-5 every single day in my apartment. I don't ever leave, and yeah, so hopefully, I can get to a place where I get to do more.
So the other takeaway is, let's start doing more things that help us feel alive, that we're making good use of our time.
Yeah.
Hopefully we've sufficiently black-pilled everyone listening to this episode.
We hope you'll come back next week. We promise it won't be as dark. At the very least, I hope you've laughed a lot, because we have.
We definitely laughed a lot.
Yeah, what can you do but laugh when you talk about the meaninglessness of life? So, it just depends on the day. Depends on the day. I wake up some days and I feel like everything has meaning, and I wake up some days and feel like nothing has meaning. So that should show you the subjectivity of meaningless, or meaning rather, in general. And we hope that you find meaning today.
Or not, because it doesn't matter.
Or not, because it doesn't matter. Anyway, we'll see you next time.
That's a wrap. See you next time.
All right.
Oh my God.
Hey, it's Cody, and I wanted to say thank you for listening to this episode. I also want to give a special thanks to our community members who shared their voice with us. If you enjoyed this episode and you're the type of person who likes helping others, would you do us a favor and share it with other people like you? If you found value in this conversation, they will too. If anything in this conversation has resonated with you, or if you have any further thoughts or questions, I want to invite you to join our community of other people like you and continue the conversation at enneagramfive.com.